So we're talking here really about the process of change. And as you see, it's expressed in this change curve, which really originates from, as we mentioned in the previous video, a lady called Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who developed the 5 stages of grief. To make sure that's very clear, they were denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. So she defined those 5 stages as dealing with grief, and it was very specifically to do with dealing with death, with the loss of a loved one. And then later on, studies were being done in the the 70s and 80s in kind of more specific business context, kind of step by step. And every time they looked at it, they saw that any process of change went through the same stages, and you ended up then with you had the 5 stages that Kubler-Ross had developed, and then you had a 7-stage model where they added a couple of extras in, and you can see what we have here is actually a 9-stage model, which effectively represents the same process, but within an organizational context. There's a couple of extra points here. You see kind of enthusiasm and commitment at the end, but it's really, really interesting. And I think we can all think of times when personally we've gone through a change and we've had to go through at least some of these stages. It's not fully prescriptive. It's not to say that every change, every person goes through every stage. And it's also not to say that it's always in that order, but it's very likely that when a change happens, you're going to go through this process of you reacted in a certain way, maybe performance and contentedness has dipped, and then it needs to come back up as we actually really accept that change. So Tim, maybe you want to say a few words about the change curve and your experiences with it.
Yeah. The topic of change management is vast, really, really big. We've looked at one particular model which relates to it. Our mentor in Werk 4 says that all leadership topics, so every leadership situation, should and can be seen through the prism of change. What I kind of think is that this change curve is a good way of expressing that, because every situation, you go into the cafeteria and the coffee machine has gone, it's been replaced with a new coffee machine. Change, everybody's standing around it complaining. You're there, right? Everybody's in the change process and everybody's dealing with it at their own speed. So I find the topic of change management really quite large and complex. I find this a very pragmatic and simple way of dealing with it, because it really confronts the leader on the following topic: how do I personally deal with change? How do I help other people deal with change and help them move through that process?
Thinking of my own experience, I can remember times in my career where a change has been implemented. Something has been changed. A KPI is different, or a process is different, or whatever it is. And I don't think the change is a good one. I think it's some sort of a negative. What I remember always or often missing was a discussion about that. I remember missing the opportunity to express the fact that I didn't see this as a good thing, or the fact that I felt frustration or denial or whatever it was. And so actually what I can potentially say is that because I wasn't able to have the conversation, I did accept it, but my level of, let's say acceptance actually brought me to somewhere lower than I was before the change. And I think whenever you talk about the change curve, it's kind of like every stage on this process is an opportunity for a leader to have a conversation. It's not, I'm just going to watch them go through the process. It's the leader should guide them through it, but allow them to express their frustration, allow them to express their resistance, and then on the other end, as things go up, allow them to express that they've accepted it, allow them to experiment, and allow them to become enthusiastic and committed to the new idea. So it's so important to have those conversations, because without them, you're kind of just letting everybody drift through, and you're not really putting anything in place to make sure that they end up where they were, or maybe potentially even more enthusiastic than they were before the change happened.
And it's interesting that you say that. One of the mantras that I like very much from a couple of the companies that I work with is the following: It is agree and commit, which is easy, disagree and commit, which is more difficult for the individual, or quit. Yeah, or get out of there. But this second piece, disagree and commit, I think a lot of people are very happy to commit to change if they are given the opportunity to disagree. Yeah. If they're given the opportunity to say, look, I don't think this is a good idea. I'm still willing to commit to it 100%, 120%, but I don't think it's a good idea. As you say, this process of expressing yourself is key. This model for me takes us right back to our model about motivation. Remember Herzberg's different motivators, and one of I'll just pull it up there, that bottom foundation, the demotivators, as being kind of more important for the leader than the motivators, because understanding the demotivators helps you understand where is the big change going to need to happen, where are the big levels of frustration, and giving people an opportunity to vent and describe their frustration in terms that they can then deal with it and then agree or disagree and commit and move forward. I put the word apathy at the bottom with an intention there, because apathy is the worst. So put apathy at the bottom. Normally acceptance would be down there as well, but for me, apathy is like absolutely the worst. Apathy is where people stop resisting, they stop speaking, they stop complaining. So it's all in here, and it's just, oh, we don't care, do whatever you like. And we have quite a few customers who have been changing for years. Every year, another change, another change, another change. Especially in industries which are kind of downsizing and they're going through massive systemic change over years, then people just get tired and they just, this attitude of, I don't care anymore. And that's a really tough one as well. The change curve. If I've got a team of 5 people, for one particular change topic, I've got 5 different change curves happening in front of me. And then I've got my own as well. And then I've probably got that of my boss and my boss's boss as well. And so this is something that's critical about this. Your ability to, analyze and accept and understand and empathize and discuss the desire for change or the limitations to change from the people around you. And it's quite overwhelming in a way, because is that your job, to help everybody through that change? Yes. Who else is going to do it, right? It's like, does anybody else get the hat? And probably not. And so seeing change through this particular perspective, the fact that everybody wants to change, if you were to say to people, do you want to be over there, accepting, experimenting, being enthusiastic, being committed, of course they're going to say, yes, I want to be there. And then having that discussion with them, what's it going to take you to get there? What do you need? What discussions do you need to have? What do you need to see? But it doesn't answer your question though. What do you do with somebody who's absolutely resistant? Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't know. What do you do? What are the options?
You try to force it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's a good option, but that is an option. Try to apply pressure, disciplinary pressure, or if they're not matching the new requirements, etc.
Yeah.
The problem you had in your previous example with the story was the fact that they are unfireable, untouchable, and therefore they really hold a lot of kind of power to resist. What do you do? I think one of the key things is, if it is a change, then ideally, you really should be able to explain why the change is necessary, why the change is good, why the change is actually gonna benefit this person to move through this process. Mm-hmm. And if you can't do that, then it's really an uphill battle, and you really should be thinking, well, why can't I explain why this change that we've decided to do is not good for this person?
So what you're saying is we need to get back to the why. Yeah.
Hmm.
Get back to the central sense of purpose of what we're trying to achieve and what we're trying to do. We need to revise our thinking on what is our actual job here in terms of leadership. Is now the time where measurement, judgment, decision, and control needs to come into play? And if yes, then feedback and discussion and ultimatum. Yeah. And I've worked with any number of leaders who have taken people who are very resistant and negotiating hard and creating groups of people around their opinions, taking them, putting them in a different part of the organization, segregating them to all intents and purposes so that they cannot damage the feeling from the other group of people. And then I think very specifically, a leader with a plan, a change plan, a plan for change. How are you going to deal with the change over time? What's your game plan? What's your change idea or learning track or change track behind it? And we've looked at one of these ideas in the context of our discussion around the Decision 8, if you recall our films on this one here. And that is a change management process. Yeah. Even though it's complex, it's one of the simpler ones. And so leaders having a plan for the change and planning it out and describing where they want to go with it and then bringing people into it is, I think, realistically, the most important thing that a leader can do.
I have one final question for you there, Tim, which I think is quite an interesting one for me. Let's say a change has been decided at an organizational level, and this change is kind of, trickling its way down. It's being, passed down into departments, into team leads. And now the team leader has to, announce the change to the team and bring them through this process. In my experience of people doing this, the team leader will always present the change as if they have already completed this process, as if they are already fully on board, they fully see the benefits, they've gone through the change process already, or they just skipped it completely and immediately accepted the change and kind of presented it as, yes, this is 100% the best way forward. So you said earlier that, you have a team of 5 people, they're all going through the change process and you are also going through the change process. So how should a leader deal with that? Should they appear as though they've completed it already and this is absolutely the best way, or should they be maybe a bit more honest or show that we're all going through the change together?
I would go with the second, be more honest, because it's authentic, right? It's you may be able to convince them that you've gone through the change already within the context of a 5-minute meeting or a presentation, but over 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks of coffees and various small discussions, they know, right? Nobody can lie that well. I think what's really critical though is that you fight up. So if you have a problem with the change, then it's really your job to go to your leadership functions and positions and say, look, this change is going to be very, very tough to sell. And I'm having a problem with it as now myself. So you need to convince me. Yeah, that's your job as my lead, is to show me what the value, show me what the where the commitment and enthusiasm is going to come from, because I need to cascade this to a much larger group of people than you do. So you need to help me understand this as well. I think that will then help with the authenticity when you can go to your people and say, I've spoken about this a number of times with a number of different leads. It's still tough for me. I am coming around slowly to their way of thinking. I'm inviting you to come with me on this journey as well. I've seen many leads who just they become the corporate mouthpiece, yeah, and it backfires all the time because the authenticity and belief in it is simply not there. So what they say in a presentation or a town hall meeting is not what they say in the pub 2 hours later, and which do you believe more? Right. So you need to come to terms with that and differentiate yourself against that change quite hard, yeah, with quite a bit of force and power.